Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the New Jersey STEM Pathways Network quarterly meeting, September 25th. It is so nice to see all of your names popping up on our screen. I wish we could all be in person together, but hopefully we will see each other at some point in 2021. We have an agenda in the chat. So if you click on the chat, we sent out the agenda earlier. It's a Google Doc, so you can just click on that and check that out. We have some hyperlinks in that, so there's some good information. I can go to the next slide, Shirley. This is just a quick overview of what we're going to be walking through today. Obviously, right now we're at the welcome and we'll be doing an icebreaker. We have a terrific guest speaker who will be joining us shortly. We have a couple of SPN updates that we're going to walk through with everybody. We also want to give a little bit of time for announcements. So if there are people on the call who would like to give any announcements regarding their work, their organization, we will have time at the end, and then some closing remarks. So the next slide for everybody is the icebreaker. So this is going to happen on Padlet. For those of you who have attended our meetings in the past, we've used Padlet. We put the link in the chat, but it's also here in the PowerPoint, and you also can use the QR code. You're going to see QR codes throughout the presentation. Shirley came up with this idea just to make things a little bit easier and maybe user-friendly for you to be able to access the information. So if we want to jump into the Padlet, the question that we really want people to give us some feedback on is sharing a challenge about your organization in terms of COVID-19 and any impact that may impact members of the SPN community. And is there anything specific to equity, as equity is going to be really the theme of this meeting. So if we can get people to just, if you can click on the link for Padlet, that's in the chat button, you'll be able to get to Padlet. So if people, I think somebody did ask about how to get to the chat function. So it should be on your toolbar under go to webinar. You guys actually as attendees can't use the chat function, but if you have questions, you can post those under questions. And I see some people have already started to do that. So I'm going to add, to respond to some of the questions, I'm going to type the answers into the question box if some people can't see the function for chatting. There was also a question about recording the meeting, and we are recording the meeting, and we'll be able to share that out. So we're just going to give a couple minutes for people to jump into the Padlet. We have a lot of good comments going, so I encourage everybody to share something with us, and I'll just give people a couple of minutes on that. Okay, if there's any people joining late right now, we are in Padlet and we are responding to just a icebreaker question around challenges in light of COVID-19, things that might be impacting your organization that other SPN members might be facing, and whether or not there might be some issues of equity as well. So I'm going to start just highlighting some of the posts that you guys are making. So I see about technology challenges, and obviously this is, you know, really in line with equity, access to devices, internet, back ordered devices. I serve on a school board, and we do have devices that are on back order, not only for the students but also for the teachers. So that is incredibly challenging. Families without Wi-Fi access or bandwidth issues. I definitely think that this was something that this is, you know, a larger issue for us here in New Jersey and so many states across the country about bandwidth. So that's certainly something that I think needs to be addressed at the state level, and that's something that we definitely want to bring up with the Department of Education and the governor's office. Attendance, I know that that's certainly at the high school level. I've had several people mention that to me. I have friends who teach at the high school level, and they said that that's certainly an issue. There's also, I see some of the emotional kids not really acclimating well to the virtual or the hybrid models. So we know that that's something that across the board is very challenging for districts. So it seems like there's a lot of, you know, there's definitely a lot of similarities in what people are facing, and we really want to take these comments and kind of put them together as a list for obstacles and challenges for the state to consider as we move forward. As most of you know, this is not a short-term issue. We are going to be facing this issue of the impact of COVID on education and the workforce, you know, well into 2021, maybe early 2022. So we definitely want to put these issues on the table so that we're starting to dig deeper and investigate solutions for both the short term and the long term. So definitely thank you guys for all of these comments. So I want to jump into our guest speaker. I first came across Derrell as a neighbor. We both worked in the same building in Newark about a decade ago. But he now is the executive vice president of 50 Can. He's been a education advocate for quite some time now. And I'm happy that he was able to join us today. And I just want to open up for him to provide his comments. And we're going to do a bit of a Q&A after his opening remarks. So Derrell, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. All right. Cool. And I guess you don't need to see me. I can hide my horrible mug here. Good morning to everybody. Just I'd much rather just kind of like chat with Kim and like field any questions you have, and hopefully I can be useful and or entertaining. So good morning, and also just a note of kind of thanks from our sister campaign, Jersey Can, which is here, which is also STEM is very important to them, and I know they've been a partner to you guys, and I want to thank you for that on their behalf. I would just say like a couple of quick things, because I know you started talking about equity and COVID as it pertains to education. So the first, and I guess the most important thing, is that every inequity that I think we are fighting over right now is an equity that existed prior to COVID, but that lives sort of in the malaise of how much inequity we're willing to tolerate, sort of as a society, both economically and ultimately in schools. So digital divide, for instance, right? Device access, these things, they are not new issues, but they are more acute issues now than they've ever been. And I saw the chat earlier, and a lot of people were talking about how difficult it is to get families connected and these other issues. So I just want to highlight that, because I feel like a lot of people and a lot of press and media have taken the current crisis like, oh, these things are new, right? Like now this inequity exists, and that is not the case. So that's kind of the first thing. The second thing I would just say, and I think I saw again in some of the issues that people are facing, systems leaders here, that procurement is an issue. Like we buy devices, we ask for devices, we look for computers, we're waiting for these things to happen, and they are taking forever to get here. And if there's anything that's good, if you want to call it good, and I don't, I'm in no way trying to say that anything about the current moment is good, but the stress and the flexibility needed to manage the current crisis, I think, has highlighted friction in school districts, in procurement, and in other education systems that people have sort of been talking about wanting to fix or improve for a very long time. But nobody had a chance to do that, or nobody had the will to do that, or nobody had the opportunity to do that. And I think now there is a chance to do so. To sort of cite an example from it's from Charter World. It's not about charters, but it's from Charter World. A friend of mine was talking about a school in Newark once, and the school did not have central air conditioning, and on one, and it was a co-located building. And so on one day, the charter leader in the school went out and brought air conditioners and installed them. And the person running the district side of that co-location was not similarly empowered. And I think that's just one little instance where we see that the systems and regulation that we use to manage traditional district schools at this point is wildly inflexible, and that is really frustrated a lot of people and made it much harder to meet the crisis of the moment. The last thing I would just say, and Kim touched on this about the length of the crisis. So so I don't drive, and so I've been in my apartment for 6 months at this point, and I'm really eager for it to stop. But I'm also a realist, and I remember in April writing a piece about returning to school in the fall, and the challenges that I felt were emergent around trying to wrangle COVID, not just for adults at the time, let alone for kids. And I think what we have learned since then is that for all the information we've managed to amass, behavior of COVID, like epidemiological behavior of COVID, there's still a lot that we don't know. There's new information seemingly every day about who's susceptible, who isn't susceptible, what the virility, that's not the word I'm looking for, what the infectiousness, like how infectious the virus is, how long it takes to get over it, how long you have antibodies that don't have antibodies. And there's also, for political reasons, and I think actually for a lot of personal reasons in terms of who's been exposed to COVID, there's a lot of uncertainty around whether or not people would actually take the vaccine and take it or take it quickly. And certainly we don't know when the vaccine is going to be done. And so to me and to us at 50CAN, we've been thinking about this as a crisis that lasts at minimum another year, because even if I can't remember what it's called, even if a vaccine was available tomorrow, lots of people, for some good reasons, lots of bad reasons, would not take it. And the people that we are sort of most concerned about, which is to say, let's say low-income folks of color who have been hardest hit by COVID for myriad reasons, they're going to be the last people to get it for reasons of distribution and healthcare and a whole bunch of other stuff. So I would just encourage everybody to think about this as a, like a once in now 10-year disruption. Normally those disruptions are financial. They're, sort of black swan financial events. But this one is the first one that is a massive public health concern. It's obviously caused a huge disruption. It would be a mistake to think that something like this won't happen again. And so how education leaders manage this in the future is of huge import, not just to the kids. Like, I think the OECD did a study the other day where they predict something like a $15 trillion loss to the American economy because of the current, disruption, as well as lots of lifetime earning reductions for kids who are, likely already a year behind and who may never recover it. Like, those are the kinds of circumstances we need to build education systems for in the future. I know it's sort of dire. I don't want to be dire, but I think that's the reality now. And it's delightful to be here with all you today, and happy to talk to Kim.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much. Can people see me now? We don't know what's going on everybody's ends. It's kind of like, I see something different than everybody else, but want to jump in. Derrell, you had mentioned when we spoke earlier in the week about some of the work that your 50CAN was putting out, the measure everything and the fund everything. Do you just want to touch on those items?
Yeah, sure. So fund everything isn't a dollar sign, actually. It's more like a philosophy about how to support the rapidly changing circumstances of families and the sort of need to possibly switch between options quickly that the COVID crisis has presented. And so, just from as an example, I think everybody knows our education financing system in New Jersey, though updated compared to many other states, right? Like, I was doing this stuff when the Corzine administration decided it wanted to move to a weighted student formula and a bunch of other stuff. Really continues to groan under its own weight, right? It doesn't account for student movement in a way that is sort of fast enough. Obviously, revenues in this state, are unpredictable from year to year, given our reliance on the income tax and these other things. And because of that, it doesn't promote the kind of student movement that we think is important right now. So, for instance, and I should just say this, I am not on team reopen, right? I think there are people who need in-person options, and we need to take that seriously. But I'm not one of these people who's like, get schools open, so just so everybody knows what my stance is. But if you are if you need an in-person option and your local school does not offer that, and one that is like nominally across one of New Jersey's many arbitrary school borders does, we need a way to finance that can happen quickly. If you are enrolled in a distance learning option of questionable quality, because I think everybody knows that some places are doing a much better job at distance learning implementation than other places are, like, you should be able to enroll in the other thing. And if Livingston is doing it and Newark is not, like, enroll. Like why not do that? And there needs to be money that follows you to do that. And just one other thing on that note, and I think the distance piece is actually an interesting provocation for how New Jersey is organized in terms of schools overall. So I know I don't need to tell anybody on this webinar that New Jersey's like 500 plus, used to be 615 back in the day, that it's many school districts are the creatures of lots of politicization, and unfortunately like a racist legacy of policymaking called redlining that color coded America, right? And so why is it that when a kid does not physically go to school, they still enroll in the same physical school? Like that just, to me, that doesn't make any sense, and especially when you consider that against the spotty implementation of distance learning, across districts or across individual schools and that kind of stuff. So for us, we're like, enroll anywhere, like that not only do you attack this sort of inertia of this set of racist policies that still play themselves out in how kids go to school, but just from a practical standpoint, like if somebody's doing it well, like enroll, so fund everything is sort of about that. Like, how would you align funding and resources to make the in the moment needs of parents and kids top of mind and a top priority? Measure everything is sort of like a different take on this. So I will show my hand. I'm a fan of annual state assessments. I know people a lot. I know they've decreased in popularity, but in our campaigns, because we have like 10 campaigns across the country, people still value the annual summative report out. And let me tell you who really values it. Families of color are very interested in continuing to know where their kids are. So if we can talk about or fight about what you use that information for, and certainly that information has been most useful for state or district chiefs who are trying to make decisions about resources or interventions and that kind of stuff. But we think the annual assessment ritual remains crucial. But in this moment in particular, where so many people are learning everywhere, right? Learning outside of school, the question of what works, right, or what is working is a really important one. And so we think that like research design, like actually like funding research, field trials, whatever, around what is happening in the world where education, where education is concerned, is a valuable exercise and worth the expense. We also think, and I think this is the one that I find most interesting, is that if you can master or demonstrate learning out in the world, why wouldn't we give you credit for that? Why wouldn't we give you advancement for that? And so my little example on this is like, if you can learn French with Duolingo, A, you're smarter than me. B, like, why wouldn't we reward that with K-12 credit or credit in terms of early college or whatever, right? And so that requires a different articulation between like school districts, higher ed, apps, programs, whatever you use in the world to demonstrate mastery. And to me, that's actually really interesting because you can roll in business and apprenticeships and other kinds of measurement that industry does, whatever, that happens outside of school to build a more complete picture of student learning. So those are our two kind of frameworks to think about policy in the crisis. And we just rolled them out, and we're going to see what we can do with it.
So yeah, in terms of the timeline, so just rolling those out, I mean, where do you see states in terms of specifically even data collection at this point? I mean, where are states in the process of responding to COVID, and like where does that fall in it?
Yeah, so one thing that a lot of our network has advocated for is an early diagnostic, because given the how school years ended all across the country, there were lots of people who just want to know, lots of parents, like lots of advocates and whatever. And so Texas, I think, sort of hopped out first on this and started offering an optional start of year assessment for families. And then Tennessee did it. I think Connecticut's going to do it. We have other folks who are still kind of like talking about this, advocating about this. Our New Mexico campaign, ED there, who is a recovering Department of Education official, is very like engaged on, you know, like the challenges or the sclerotic nature of test developing companies, and how they sort of are making this a lot harder than it needs to be. But the early year assessment thing has been really important to us. A lot of folks are talking about comparability, and there's, you know, concern that despite the current administration's and, you know, Senate Democrats' support of keeping spring annual assessments, that could change and that could go away. And so there's just a fight about whether or not there will be any assessment at all. You know, let alone whether or not we can collect the data well and use it to make a bunch of decisions. I think from our standpoint, and like not everybody agrees on this, because, you know, you can send a message that the data is not important by saying this, but our folks are like, we would be willing to, you know, take a year off from, you know, enforcement or sanctions or, you know, accountability if it meant we got to continue collecting the data, you know, especially right now, while people make the case for an improved or changed role for annual summative assessment. So that's what's kind of out there. I think, you know, partly to the measure everything thing, maybe people saw earlier in the year, there was like a report on learning loss. And the data for that came from like a math platform called Zern, right? And, you know, obviously, like, school districts don't always have access to this data. That's another, you know, issue that we talk about. Like, well, you know, if absence stuff can help you get this stuff in real time to help you improve instruction in the short term, like, what's the data sharing agreement that a school district has to have with a platform vendor so that data can help, you know, other people? That's been one of our issues. But we just think that this kind of moment actually accentuates the importance of those things, precisely because, you know, assessment in the K-12 concept is sort of like a political fight, you know, right now, and has been for a long time. And so you know, if there's a market for data collection, it's developing right now in a way that I think is free of the fight over what we're going to do with annual summative in the spring.
I'm curious, because of your knowledge of New Jersey and how education works.
I live here.
How do you think the fact that we don't have a permanent commissioner of education has impacted leadership around COVID and the response for the districts?
That's a great question. So this is like the you know, I remember people used to always say, we just need to get the politics out of education. And I'd be like, that's like getting the sugar out of syrup. You know, it just doesn't, it's not real. Like they're the same thing, you know? And so the fact that, you know, education is highly local and highly political, on the one hand, could mean you get this like bespoke system that is highly responsive to local need and local character, you know, in the best cases, right, in fantasy land or whatever. What it more often means is that you have, particularly if we're talking about, you know, a big urban school district or something like that, is that you have a political meat grinder. That means that a term of employment for a system leader will be short and tumultuous, right? And that whatever happens, something different or like a different agenda will be adopted fairly shortly after that, right? So you know, it's like it's 3 years of trying to be consistent, 2 years of unmaking, and then another person, you know, that kind of thing. And you know, you see that in New York. You kind of see like Newark has so much consistency comparably, you know, or like Camden, whatever. Those are outliers compared to, you know, what would normally happen. So one, the environment is not one that lends itself to consistency, and certainly the fact that I'm not advocating for a state like an elected state chief. I actually think that's actually worse, right? At least the governor could shield you if you're an appointee, but when John King and Andrew Cuomo had these roles, right? And King's an appointee. I mean, basically, like the government, like they wanted the same things, but the governor would kill him on the politics. It was like that's not optimal. At the same time, like take Louisiana, where John White, who was an assistant soup in Jersey City at one point before working for Joel Klein and then going on to lead the state DOE there. He had like an incredibly long tenure, and his consistent vision, and I mean he was a stellar politician, led to like real gains and real change in Louisiana, including how they looked at higher ed, teacher quality, and teacher pipeline, right? Which is only the kind of stuff you can do if you have, almost a decade to be sort of in charge. And I think we know, even in the Christie administration, where we have like, we had a commissioner, and then we didn't have one, and then we had a couple of interims, and then we had Chris Surf, and then then Chris was he was the local chief or whatever, and that was an administration that was ostensibly aligned around all this stuff. And even then, it was very tumultuous. So
that was a interesting time period, to say the least. You hit on a little bit of teacher recruitment and training. You just mentioned it in passing. I wonder where do you think the challenges are, and where do you see people doing things right, where maybe there's things that we can mirror here in New Jersey?
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, so equity is the focus of our discussion. So I will just say this: it's a big problem that in a country that is rapidly browning, like 80% of the teachers are white, and like I'm going to be flipped. It's like I have nothing against white people, but like this is not consistent with what we say we want in terms of having a diverse workforce, especially if you think the diverse workforce is better. And certainly, like, not my opinion. Some of the research would bear out that a diverse teaching workforce is better. And in particular, like the manticore, the mythical beast of all this, the black male teacher, right, isn't in high supply, right? So at some point we have to do something about that from a system standpoint. I think this moment, the COVID moment, actually gives us a chance to short circuit that in a really interesting way, because, for instance, however you feel about pods, you could be getting lots of people who are interested in teaching, and in particular, lots of people of color who are interested in teaching or may not know they're interested in teaching, out there doing small slices of what you would be doing in school, as in like in physical school, as a way to build pipeline, right? So like maybe we have somebody who's a prospective student teacher doing a reading intervention, right? Maybe the state deploys a tutoring corps, right? That is lots of college kids that are highly literate, right? I mean, to me, as like math seems to be the thing that you can rein back in. If we can't close the literacy gap early, or continue to keep closing it, kids stand like a less than a 10% chance of ever really recovering. You could do that, right? You could do that right now, and on the back end of that, you'd have a lot of people who might decide they want to be teachers. So if that means you need like an emergency certification kind of approach, or actually an emergency non-certification approach, right? Because like the traditional approach has given us the workforce we have, right? So maybe using that isn't going to give you the one you want, right? It gives you the one you have. I think those kinds of things are out there. The one other thing I think would be really important on this, and I remember working on this policy a little bit when I was still doing stuff here in Jersey, is that there's like no articulation between what colleges of education produce and what school districts want. And so at some point we need, I'm not saying we need like an RFP, but it's like the financial incentives for colleges of education are aligned around making elementary education teachers, right? Because you can do a lot of them. and it, it's not super expensive, so it's easier to do, But that doesn't mean that school district X needs 50 elementary school teachers, right? It might need 10 physics teachers. And there's no way to bid that up and say, hey, send us 10 physics teachers, And so if you're a fan of like residency as a way to, to do your teacher training, to me, like those kinds of relationships just need to be more like formalized. Like, okay, so I'm District X to your College of Ed Y, or your teacher pipeline Y. Like, let's assume other people in colleges of education could do this. This is what we're looking for over the next 3 years. As a district, we want to wildly ratchet up STEM training, let's say, right? We'd really like to double down on computer science. We need 30 computer science teachers, and we'd love for 15 of them to be people of color over the next 2 years. Let's do that, and I just don't think that sort of that kind of linkage is promoted or widely spread right now.
Yeah. Communication seems to be lacking on a lot of fronts. We spoke earlier, I told you about what the SPN's doing and the ecosystems and kind of how we're working. And I think one of the things that we all want to improve are relationships with business or the private sector. So from your perspective, what role does the private sector or businesses have in the work that we're doing? And if you have any examples of some companies that are really doing their investments right, we could share that too.
Yeah, I mean, so anecdotally, and I'm not just saying this because I know there's a bunch of STEM business leaders on here, but the role of business in particular in this shoot, right, is outsized and really important right now for a couple of reasons, right? One, if you take the challenge of wildly disrupted school all over the place, right, happening particularly to high schoolers, right, who are trying to figure out what they want to do. They have, college costs and all these other things, and whether or not you will go to college, like physically. I mean, it's a very challenging set of decisions to navigate. I feel like business has an outsized role in both improving the training of those people, right? Like so the apprenticeship, any of this other stuff. In a way that would have seemed like enrichment before, but now it's sort of like an educational necessity given the disruption, right? So I think business has a serious role there. The other thing is that, like, much like our schools, we could choose to decide we want to return to the same system when this is all over. I would recommend that we don't do that, right? But our economy has the same opportunity to figure out what it wants to do. So, in Hawaii, where one of our campaigns is, our state leader there, he's really into STEM and computer science for all, and he believes that Hawaii is a place of intense multilingualism, and he thought they should be leveraging that as part of a future economic play. In a place whose economy is dominated by tourism. Now no one goes to Hawaii, right? So the Hawaii's economic model overnight is destroyed. And the question of whether or not they'll be able to come back from it is an important one, right? I mean, it's existential. And so to me, like, there's no reason why, New York has to reinvent itself as a service economy, right? There's no reason, there's no reason why New Jersey's current economy needs to be the same, right? Like, I'm sorry, there's no reason why in a year we have to do the same thing. And so I just think that if you want to take that on, right? If you want to take back the Silicon Valley, moniker that New Jersey had when it had Bell Labs, et cetera, before all that, fled out to the Tony Valley. Like, business leaders need to make a decision about that now, right? And then we can talk about, like, aligning education and everything else to it. I think the most important thing about this, and it's market pressure, right? If businesses make that decision, then they will be more equipped to help people acclimate to that new world faster than K-12 will, right? Because K-12 has friction, all this friction, built in, and they're great opportunities for partnership there. So for me, like, I would love to see us, I don't know what we're going to turn into, but the fact that like 65% of kids today are going to have jobs that don't exist yet. I think we should be, as a highly educated state, let's get in front of that. We have a chance to do that now.
Yeah, great. Stephanie, who's part of our attendee group, mentioned that businesses shouldn't just have a role, but a true responsibility. So not just optional. And I think that was a great point.
I'm not normally one for mandates, but I agree. So.
We are sort of towards the end of our time. I want to give you, if you have any closing remarks or things that you want to highlight around 50 Can or even Jersey Can for people on the call, then I want to give you just a couple of minutes.
No, I mean, our New Jersey campaign is ably led by Patricia Morgan, who was an assistant commissioner and is a lawyer. So I can't win an argument with her. And they've been very focused on teacher pipelines. STEM is one of their issues. A bunch of stuff on school finance reform, some stuff on charter facilities, like equity and excellence. So look out for them. They're a good partner. The other thing I would just say, and I'm normally like a skunk at the garden party on this, is that in 2019, 18% of African American fourth graders tested proficient or above on the NAEP. I am uneager to run back to that, right? And I feel like the uncertainty of the current moment has people like really, like desperate to get back to something that looks like normal. Normal was horribly inequitable, and lots of kids were getting the short end of the stick and never becoming the best version of themselves, because of it. Like, I would just encourage everybody to remember that was what we had and that we could do better.
Definitely. Well, friend, thank you so much for joining us. It was great to hear from you, and we'll definitely follow along, and we are following along with what Jersey Can is doing, and reach out to them when we have alignment on things. So we just want to thank you so much for your time, and we'll definitely be following your work.
Not at all. I really appreciate it. Thanks, Kim. Good to see you.
Okay, thank you. We are going to pull back up into our presentation and jump into some NJSPN updates. If we go to the next slide, thank you, this slide, Shirley. So as most of you know, and you've been getting the e-blast and kind of following us on social media, we have our hashtag NJSTEM Together campaign. This was really started to create a hashtag where people could highlight what they were doing while in sheltering in place at first, and now really just staying home during the COVID crisis. So we do have a list of resources that probably some of you have populated on the call. The link is up here on the on this slide, but also the QR code, and it does go out every week in our e-blast. So we certainly encourage people to continue to populate that. I definitely think that's something that could be beneficial in the long run. So please visit that link and provide any resources you have. And if you have any suggestions for us on how to improve that resource, then please let us know. For the next slide, we just wanted to show something that we thought was a little interesting, which was our SPN leadership virtual retreat. And just want to kind of use this illustration to a couple of illustrations to show you what we discussed. We had a really great speaker, the head of federal relations at Rutgers, Francine Newsom-Pfeiffer, who talked to us about the federal education perspective and where funding was. And although she has an expertise in higher education, she did speak some to K through 12 as well. But you can see here from the illustration kind of where the conversation was around funding, where the CARES Act was, where where politics really came into this in terms of being a bipartisan or a partisan issue. So this is just an illustration to highlight the conversation. The next slide shows where our ecosystems were in terms of their updates and the work that they were doing. So you see equity was highlighted in this. There also was an application that went out from the national or international ecosystem leadership for new ecosystems to apply. So we did have a discussion on that. Again, this is just really that visual representation of the discussion. And the next slide showed where we were at in terms of word clouds for our ecosystem. So this was a way for the ecosystems to really reflect for themselves on using monthly reports, pulling words out that were mentioned frequently or more frequently to really highlight where their focuses and their priorities were. And so again, this is just really a visual representation of that discussion. I'm showing this to kind of show you guys what our discussion was about, but also I think this is a really great tool if you guys are doing any sort of team building or collaborative work. This sort of illustration work I think is interesting for people to walk away with, and also to see. We were able to see this illustration in real time while we were having these discussions. So just wanted to share that with you all, and you guys can get this presentation and you can see it, you can review it in the future. The next slide, we have been speaking for several years with the whole group about our ecosystem work. This is really the first year where anybody who's part of the SPN can take part in our community of practice. So the SLE-COP, it's this STEM Learning Ecosystems Community of Practice. This year, the theme is Resilience and Resolve, which obviously is quite appropriate. This is a virtual community of practice, a virtual conference. Anybody can register for it. It's very reasonable in terms of the fee, but we wanted to share this with you and would love for as many of our SPN members as possible to register and attend. There are various sessions that are taking place. You'll be able to see the different sessions and really just jump into the ones that you think are most interesting and applicable to your work. They're using kind of a really cool platform. It's called Verbella, which is you get your own avatar. There are networking opportunities. You're talking to people. So it's a pretty cool tool, and I think it'll be interesting. So again, you can use the QR code on the presentation to jump into the registration, and definitely would love to see people from New Jersey well represented at this conference. So the next slide and just remarks are really around the STEM data dashboard. You guys have been hearing us talk about this for some time now, and there have been some updates, and I just want to make sure that you guys are aware of those updates and aware of the data dashboard as a tool and a resource for your work. And still, we are seeking feedback on it. So we know that this isn't a perfect system. Please know that we are using publicly available data to populate the system. So we aren't creating our own data, but rather aggregating data from multiple resources, and most importantly from the Department of Education. So the next slide, we developed this dashboard around important indicators of success for STEM in terms from the SPN perspective. So the first indicator was increasing student population in STEM education. So that's what you're seeing on this slide. You see in the corner, you're able to select any district in the state. And now we have the option to look at data all the way back from 2015, but current with 2019 data that has been submitted to the state. Again, you can look at any district in the state. So I just, picked one that kind of had like the best color scheme so that it seemed the most aesthetically pleasing. But you can look at any district. As you can see, this district is Atlantic City. This second indicator of success is increasing equity in STEM. So you're looking at the different demographics, the subgroups, and seeing performance around the NJ Ask and the Math Park scores. So this would be the goal too, that we are aggregating data around. The next slide shows goal 3, which is increasing student performance in STEM. So again, this is just another point of another data point for us to review, and when we're comparing districts. You can see here, this is Barnegat Township. Again, you can look at any district in the state, and you can look at that district obviously over time. So we can go back to 2015, 2016, 2017, 18, and now into 2019, which is the most recently available public data, to see how the district has progressed or regressed. The last goal is goal 4, which is promoting stackable qualifications, credentials, and real-world connections. Some of this data is volunteer, so you don't have to submit it. So that's something that we also want to investigate deeper with, in terms of working with the Department of Education on collecting data from our STEM perspective. And I know that in the past, STEAM has been brought up, and that is also still on the table for discussion around the collection of data for the state and how we can incorporate that into the dashboard. So please know, for those who are more using the term STEAM, that is still something that we have on the table, and know that that's a priority. So again, that would be goal 4. The next slide, this is going to be new to the dashboard, and it's actually not available just yet, but it will be available shortly. So we wanted to make sure to share it with you, is around story mapping. And so this is New Jersey's STEM data story. This is actually an interactive page. You'll see it's at 2019 on the right corner, but it goes back as far as 2015, and there's movement in the different categories in terms of the number of workers by occupation. So it's a pretty cool tool. This is for really just the bigger picture around STEM in the state, but this is going to be a tool that's added to the dashboard, so that one, that it's not staying stagnant, that we're improving the dashboard as a tool. And I think it's also going to help us better tell the story of STEM here in the state. We hope that this is a tool that we will share more frequently with policymakers, and that districts will use as well, in addition to funders. The next slide I just wanted to highlight, actually the next 2 slides, but the next slide I wanted to highlight one of our ecosystems. So this is our Newark STEAM Coalition. This was a tool for us to showcase the work that they've been putting in, the investments that they have been putting in. So you can see the number of learners impacted, the number of ecosystem members, what their goals are, in the financing that has gone on behind the ecosystem. So this is an example of one of the ecosystem's data stories. And then the next ecosystem that I just wanted to highlight really quick was Derrell, and showcasing their story for the ecosystem in terms of data. So number of learners impacted, again, their goals, which are different. And in particular, to Derrell is really the ecosystem is driving, I'm sorry, the school district is driving the ecosystem. So the impact is really great from one school district. So I think that that's really interesting. And so we will have information available for all of our ecosystems. But right now, this is a work in progress. And I just want to thank the Heldrick Center at Rutgers for working on this with us. They've done a terrific job. If anybody's interested in learning more about the dashboard or learning more about the data stories, this might be a tool for your organization to develop. Please just shoot me an email, and I'm happy to chat with you about it and even connect you with the Heldrick Center at Rutgers. So I think we can move to the next slide. And I'm going to turn it over to Shirley.
All right, thank you, Kim. So we're excited to be launching a new campaign today. Our campaign is called I Can STEM. If anybody wants to visit the website, you can just scan the QR code if you want to just kind of follow along. So I Can STEM is our new diversity and inclusion campaign. Our mission is to recognize people of color, women, and LGBTQ community members in STEM. We're going to be highlighting famous STEM professionals, but we also want to highlight everyday STEM heroes here in New Jersey. So with that, we're going to be having a nomination process. You can nominate anybody in the community that kind of fits the role model description for I Can STEM. And we're going to have our New Jersey STEM Strategic Advisory Board review these nominations. And we want to narrow it down to 12 role models from New Jersey, where we'll be able to kind of feature them every month throughout the year. That's our goal. And winners will be notified in December. And then again, we'll be highlighting them one by one each month throughout the year. So this is just a really exciting campaign, kind of in the movement for diversity and towards equity. And we're really hoping that everybody kind of jumps on board and sends us nominations so we can feature people in our own state.
Thank you, Shirley. I'll just add to the I Can STEM. I think that this is just another tool for the SPN for outreach to stakeholders across the state. So while this is something that role models could be nominated from K through 12, from higher ed, from nonprofit, I think it's also a great tool for us to look at in terms of recruiting more business sector supporters. And I think that it's a good tool to make that connection with companies across the state. I did already propose this concept to the Research and Development Council's Board of Directors, and there was a lot of excitement around it. My board chair, who represents Merck, really wanted to give me more time on the agenda to lay out what it looks like, what the nomination process looks like, you know, and the timeline and all of that. And Shirley has done a tremendous amount of work on this, including the website, the nomination form, and the process. And you know, this is equity has always been important, obviously, to the STEM Pathways Network, but where we are in the country right now and the challenges that we are facing, we did want to do something in response to show support for diversity and inclusion in STEM. And so, you know, I think it's going to be a really great initiative, and I definitely just want to thank Shirley for all of her work on it. And this is new for us, so please let us know any suggestions or thoughts you have on it as we go through the process. This is, you know, our 1.0. We know that there will be other iterations of it. So if anybody has any suggestions or questions, you know, please let us know. Also, we are monitoring the control panel here. So if anybody has any questions, you can click on the raise hand function and we can unmute you. We have a good amount of people on the call, so we can't unmute everybody at the same time. But if you had any questions or thoughts, you can certainly raise your hand and we'll be scrolling through to unmute you if you want to answer any particular, ask any particular questions. If not, right now, in terms of what's already been said, okay, we have a question. So let me go ahead and unmute Myrna. Let's see. You should be unmuted.
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, Kim. How are you? Hi, Shirley. Just a quick question about the nomination pool. Educators, business, the business community, are there any restrictions?
No, I'm going to say there aren't any restrictions. I think we're leaving it very open this year. You know, we are going to work hard to get the call for nominations out as far as we can, and we definitely want everybody in this meeting to promote it. But we're really not sure what the response is going to be, so we definitely want to leave it open.
Thank you.
Great. Let's see. Any other questions on it? Oh, okay, Christine.
I have a question. Can it be teams of people if it was 3 people that worked to bring STEM to underserved students for the summer? Or do we just pick one of them?
I would be, I mean, I think we would be fine if you wanted to submit all of their names.
Okay.
I definitely think we're going to leave it as one, like per role model. So I don't think we're going to group people together. But that's a good point, Christine. That also could be highlighted in our STEM Month Awards. So those people might fit that criteria as well. But I think for the I Can STEM, we're going to have it as an individual process.
Okay.
Thank you. Let's see. Okay, looks like I think that's it for questions on that. Let's go to, we're gonna go to Pavi right now, and she's going to introduce the hashtag NJSTEM Together Communities Challenge. Pavi, are you there?
Yes, Kim, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Awesome. Good morning, everyone. It's my pleasure to introduce the New Jersey STEM Together Communities Challenge. This is a challenge for high school students. So South Jersey STEM Innovation Partnership, which is our ecosystem, is happy to partner with Siemens, who's the main sponsor, as well as with the NJSPN to launch this Communities Challenge. Time and again, we have seen that the communities have been facing with a variety of challenges, from natural disasters to pandemic today. Just the challenges same as are in different forms. So we thought that it would what can we do and what the students can do in order to spearhead a process for building a resilient communities. So that was the birth for the Communities Challenge. I'm so happy that Kim brought it at the state level. So it's open for all the high school students within the state to apply as a team. This will be an annual challenge. So year after year, there'll be the challenge will be posed. The students, this year it'll be a virtual event, but the students needs to identify the issues that their communities are facing today because of COVID, and how would they like to address the issue. So there is no restrictions on what the solution could be. It could be from simple urban planning to designing an app to developing a prototype. The idea is to make them think through what could be the solution and present it as a communication plan to the policymakers. So we have a timeline set up where it starts. The registrations are open today, and we are working with Siemens to partner with their Engineering for Change program. So we are getting, we will be releasing the criterias and the rubrics as we go along once we see the proposals. But there are a lot of seminars where we are involving the lawmakers and the policymakers from day one to guide them, and there will be a mentoring opportunity also available to the students based on what they want to, what they have picked, and how they want to resolve that. So please take a look at it. And as Kim said for the earlier one, this is also 1.0. We have great plans ahead, where in the phase 2 we want to definitely extend it with some fellowship opportunities. We are talking to higher eds with their public policy institutions to see how we can partner on this. But this is just the beginning. But please take a look at it. And if you, please encourage your high school students. It has to be a student-driven. Chaperones are welcome to register, but we want it to be a student-driven program for this one. So please take a look and spread the word.
Hey, Pavi, I just wanted to see, did you want to mention a little bit about the mentoring option?
Sure, Kim. So we are working on, so based on the proposals we receive, what we are planning to do is we are evaluating a mentoring platform where the students can reach out to the mentors. Let's say if they want to do on urban planning, or it could be on an app development, or it could be on any engineering solution. So depending on what their proposed solutions would be, we are sourcing mentors today so that they can reach out, and the process is structured in such a way that the mentors can actually say their availability and the students can reach out to them in their specified time. So we want to provide all the help we could in terms of the resources. Siemens has been gracious enough to also point us to different resources, and we are collating all those resources at this time. And we are looking at that same platform, the mentoring platform, where all the resources will be available to the students. And we also wanted the students to actually do some research. It has to be a data-driven process on how they are choosing the problem that they are addressing. So we are also encouraging the students to look at what research has been done in terms of those problems, and that will give them the clear goal of how they want to solve it as well. So all these details, the mentoring platform and the process will be soon flushed out. So please please bookmark this link, and where you will see the constant updates on the STEM, on the communities challenge being posted.
Great, thank you, Pavi. We also have a great informational flyer that Shirley put together. We'll share that out when we send the follow-up email to everybody on the webinar. But that's something that you can distribute. Looking at 20 teams, maybe 100 kids from across the state for this inaugural year. As Pavi mentioned, this is, a work in progress. So this year will be, there will be a learning curve, but I think we'll be able to really do a program that is fun and interesting for students. It's also going to be a way for us to connect with legislators in the state. And so the students will have to, as Pavi mentioned, submit a letter, basically a letter of intent to their local legislator about what they see as a challenge in their community and what solution they feel is best to meet it. So I think that'll be interesting. And so we're working right now on soliciting all of the legislators across the state to let them know that this program is happening, and that providing them a template response letter so that they can acknowledge students. So we think that'll be an interesting, that's sort of like an interesting connection for the legislators and our work in STEM. So again, as Pavi mentioned, definitely you can check out the website. That's where updates will be. Registration is open, and there will be support as we move along through the challenge. As you can see, October 8th is a seminar, and we're going to do more than one of those through the process. We also may, during the seminars, host guest speakers for the students to hear from. So I think this will be, I think this is a good way to give students a voice in this crisis, for them to be able to speak to what they see as the problems. And as everybody knows here who's been in the classroom, students mostly come up with better answers than the adults the majority of the time. So I'm eager to hear what they have to say. And I think this is, for us at the state level, a way for us to engage students in our work and have student voice in our work. And I think our ecosystems have done a very good job at that, but I think at the SPN at large, we've been seeking that to increase that more and more. So I think that this is a way for us to do that. I'd like to open it up to see if there's any questions for Pavi on the challenge. So if anybody has a hand raised, or do we have any questions in the box on the challenge? I don't think so. Oh, I think Colleen, I think you have a question. I'm not sure if it's on the challenge, but I'm going to unmute you anyway. So Colleen Murray.
Oh, I'm sorry. I I was hoping to remain anonymous today, but I was just interested in the idea of model schools. I feel like our district has a high interest, but we have a lot to do, I think, before we can get to the point. I don't know. I'm just interested in finding model schools that we can perhaps visit this year.
Okay.
Because you had mentioned that you were looking for, I thought you said 12 model schools throughout New Jersey. So I was just interested in those results. I may have heard wrong. I'm sorry.
Was it for the STEM data dashboard, Colleen, or was it for the challenge?
Well, I mean, I'd love both, but I think it was for the STEM data dashboard.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I can certainly get back to you on that.
Thank you. And I am interested in the competition as well. It's finding the time to sift through materials. That's like my hardest thing. And I know that we're all in the same boat. So I appreciate this. This is helpful. And hi, Poppy.
Okay. Thank you so much, Colleen.
Thank you.
Okay. I see that Padma has a question. I'm going to unmute Padma. Hi, Padma. Ooh, Padma, I don't see your mic coming up. If you have a question, you can also just pop it in the box. Oh, there you are.
I think now it is. This question is for Pavi. Can the student, if they have to participate in the competition, does this have to be a data-driven process, or can they just come up with a innovative, novel idea? Or do they have to really do an assessment and have to collect data, and it has to be like, solution to fill a gap?
Great question, Padma. The idea is for the students to actually evaluate. They might find different problems that are existing in the community. We want them to go through the process of how they go through the decision making, and also to look at the research part of a research angle that people have done around that problem. So that will help them to guide them to see what the problem that they need to choose and how they need to solve for that. So it's if we wanted to actually bring an aspect of how we usually write grants, right? When we are writing grants, there is a letter of intent, and you back by the data of why you think this is the problem. So we want to bring that aspect, but not strictly like I'm sure they're all like fighting for time. So we don't want to handcuff them, but it will be an intelligent way, we thought, to make them choose a problem.
Okay, thank you. So it has to be through so you are looking at a methodical way, right? They need to do like a aim and go through a process, and not just like, because in a STEM project, usually what I envision is that also to encourage innovation. So that is what I was like, kind of both the project, like the one that we were discussing before and this one, I just thought that innovation aspect of it is not just encouraged. But I think, probably because we are doing these challenges for the high school students, I think this may be a better way. But I just wanted to discuss that. Thank you, Pavi.
No worries. The solution is the innovation. So they can come with innovative solutions once they really identify which problem that community is facing, right? So that's where the innovation lies for us, where they come up with innovative solutions for the problem they're identifying. For the problem identification part is where we are saying, why they chose the problem.
Thank you.
It's based on the data. Yeah.
Great, thank you. I'm looking, I don't think I see any other hands. So let's, thank you, Pavi. Thank you so much. We're going to move to the next slide, which is just STEM month. And I think Shirley, you're going to jump into this.
Mm-hmm. So we're gearing up for NJSTEM month. For those of you joining us for the first time, March is New Jersey STEM Month. It's a month-long celebration that highlights all of the Garden State's accomplishments in STEM and innovation. We actually first started off with NJ STEM Week, and that took place from 2015 to 2017. In 2018, with the support of Governor Murphy's administration and Assemblyman Andrew Zwicker's office, we expanded New Jersey STEM Week to include the entire month of March. For how to get involved in NJ STEM Month, basically, you'll be hosting an event geared towards STEM or participating in a STEM event, or you can engage on social media. I know 2021 is going to look a little different, but we still encourage everyone to host virtual events or very small gatherings, keeping everyone socially distanced. We offer mini grants up to a value of $500, and these can be used for enhancements towards your events. We also host a Twitter contest during the month of March, and we hold usually a STEM showcase at the State House, but 2021, it's most likely going to be a virtual STEM showcase where all organizations interested in participating will need to fill out an application, and we're going to kind of go and select a few of those organizations and showcase them in a virtual sort of magazine book. So we're excited for that. We also have a lot of resources available on our website. You can find the logo that you can put on any of your material. We have a mock press release. We have a PowerPoint that you can download and edit to suit your event. We even offer an op-ed guide. So please check out the website. There's just so many resources, and that's where we're going to be adding all of the deadline dates for all of our different competitions. And so the website is www.njstempathways.org/njstemmonth. You can also scan the QR code. And we're just really excited for NJ STEM Month. Also, our first seminar is this Monday at 12 o'clock. The link is here, and I'm going to be sending it out in email. So hopefully, if you want to learn more about NJ STEM Month, please join us on Monday at 12 o'clock for our seminar.
Great.
If anybody has any questions, feel free to raise your hand. Okay. No questions. So moving forward, communication updates. We have our resource center, and this is separate from our NJ STEM Month resources page. But one of our newest additions are our STEM grants page. And this was actually a suggestion from one of our members. I'm going to give a shout out to Myrna Bonin. She sent an email and she said, why not feature grants on the website? So we decided that's a good idea. Why not? So we now have that available, and you can also visit our resources page to find infographics any of our webinars, Stebinars, are available on our website. This meeting today will be posted, like the recording will be available on the website under our webinars. We have all of our one-pagers available, whether they be about the ecosystems, our computer science group, early learning. All of our one-pagers that we have are all under there. And we also have our jobs, where anybody can just go ahead and post a job, visit the page. If you're looking for a job, we have that set up. We actually set that up around June. And then to subscribe to our newsletter, you can also find the subscription link on our resource center. So does anybody have any questions about that? Okay, Maku, I'm going to unmute you. Okay, you're unmuted, Maku.
Okay, I think that's better. Hi, is there any way that the ecosystems can update their websites on your page as well? Because I know that there's a few partners that are finding us through the NJSPN website, which is great, but we would definitely love to make sure we have the most updated information. So how would
Yeah.
ecosystems go about doing that? Yeah.
I'm the point of contact, so just send me whatever information, whatever needs to be changed, and I'll just go quickly in there and edit it.
Gotcha. Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, Christine, I see your hand is up.
I also have a question on the ecosystems. Is there support in getting help in setting one up? Because I know if you look at the map of New Jersey, there's a big blank hole for Monmouth and Ocean County. So I'd love to try to start something here.
I'm actually going to let Kim jump in for that one.
Sure. So yeah, Christine, we can talk about it. I have other potential ecosystem leads that I've been talking to in Monmouth County. Unfortunately, COVID kind of changed their minds about starting up this year, but I think that still means that they might queue up for next year. So let's you and I talk about it. I'll give you sort of the background and we can see where we can go from there.
Great. I'd definitely like to be in that conversation.
Absolutely.
Maku, I see your hand raised again, so I'm just going to unmute you, and you can let me know.
I think she took.
Oh wait, nope.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so I think that's it for questions on this. So I'm going to move on to the next slide. All right, so our NJSPN Friday updates. These go out every Friday. I try to send them out before 10 a.m. Today, we're actually going to be sending out our newsletter after this meeting. But please subscribe. If you're not subscribed, we usually put all of our updates in there. We like to put articles of what's happening in New Jersey that pertains to STEM or equity, education, any of that. We try to find some national news. And we're always putting webinars and sharing events that are going on in New Jersey. So it's definitely very good resource to kind of have. If you are subscribed, but for some reason you're not receiving them, they might be falling in your spam or your junk inboxes. So I would just suggest kind of looking in there, or maybe your organization might block emails from our server. So maybe kind of put us on the safe list. But you could find, I think you can just scan. I put the QR code so you could just scan and subscribe if you're not subscribed. And we also have the link there. But we find these to be very good for just sending out the information out there, and we try really hard. If you send us information that you want to share, we kind of blast it out there. So please, if you're ever interested in sharing something, send it my way and I'll include it in our e-blast. But any questions on this? Okay.
Great, thank you, Shirley. So the next slide, we have priority groups. For those on the call that are new, there are 4 priority groups that we are currently working with at the state level: computer science, workforce development, teacher recruitment and training, and early childhood. We just wanted to do kind of a check-in with people who either aren't part of a priority group or maybe just to confirm that they are part of a priority group. So there is a QR code there, which would take you to a Google form to fill out, but we will also send a follow-up email to everybody for the Google form. And we just want you to provide your information and identify which group you would like to be a part of or are a part of, and just kind of doing a reset on that. And obviously we're running ahead of time. We had a feeling, obviously this virtual model is new for us. We had a feeling that we would have a couple of extra minutes, but we just wanted to go ahead and see if anybody has any announcements from the group. Is there anybody in the webinar who would like to give an announcement about their organization or some event that they know about or a program that they know about? I'd be happy to open up the floor for people to provide those remarks. All you have to do is just raise your hand, and we will unmute you and give you the floor. Christine, I see you have your hand up, but I also I thought that you might be jumping off, but I don't know if you have an update.
I have a minute and a quick update, and then I am jumping off. Camp Invention is offering kits that can be sent home to parents, and I have some funding that I'm doing with underserved students that they'll ship it right to their houses, and they'll do hands-on STEM. I know for our district, high school wise and middle school wise, we can't send home anything for labs. So that might be something that parents want and is available for those students that are looking for that hands-on activity. We're going to be working with some underserved students at Walnut Street Elementary School because we got some funding to send those kits home, and then we'll be running that like a club after school, but virtually. So that is an option. I can send the link for that if there's anyone that's looking into that or looking for options for themselves.
Great, thank you. That's awesome. Anybody else with any updates or announcements, questions, concerns? We're thinking that the in-person SPN quarterly meetings on Fridays were like a good way to kick off the weekend. And now with these virtual lives that we're living, we're thinking that everybody might be drained by Friday morning. So we're probably going to do a check-in and might change these meetings to maybe like a Wednesday afternoon, just because I know Friday is really is a rough day in the new normal. The next slide is our closing. We, want to thank everyone for joining us this morning. We missed you all. We definitely want your input on this meeting. We want to make sure that this meeting is, valuable for you. We know that everybody is busy, and also just, screen time is valuable. We want to make sure that this is really something that you get something out of. So please do take our post-meeting survey. We'll be sending that out in an email, so you don't need to use the QR code, although the QR code is there. And again, thank you, everybody. And I want to thank Shirley for all of her work on this meeting, and really wishing everyone good health. And, hopefully we'll see each other soon, but we'll definitely stay in contact via email and virtually. So thanks, everybody.